so that way I can send this to as kind of like a little email newsletter recap for anybody who wanted to see it but didn't have a chance to get on here. So I want to start off real quick. First of all, by introducing Nema. So Nema is first and foremost a good friend of mine, but he's also a local sommelier here in San Diego. He is the wine director for Greystone and a couple of their sister restaurants, and then he also represents the winery that we have on today, the Mendoza Malbec, that's part of the wine club this month. So it's the Cuvelier Los Andes wine club that Nema's representing. So Nema, why don't you take a quick second and just give us the quick breakdown, a couple of minutes of yourself and maybe how you got into the business and how you got into representing the wine that we have on tonight. And also before you do that real quick, because I hate Zooms about wine and things like this that go on for 30 minutes and nobody takes a drink, because I've been there and it's unbearable and it's brutal. So right away, listen, today's a very special day. It's inauguration day. Whatever side of the ballot you voted on, the last thing we're going to do here is get political, but I just want to say it's an opportunity for everybody to better themselves and for the country to better themselves. So in honor of inauguration day, I definitely want to say cheers to everybody. Thanks for joining. Take a moment. Nema, thank you. Thank you everybody for your time, and cheers, salute.
Everybody, Laura, Julie, and Scott, and that's Melissa Warner, right?
Yeah. What's up, Laura? You got some new joiners on there. I love it. Awesome. So yeah, Nema, take it away, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So first off, thank you for including me into this Zoom tasting. I feel like definitely needed an excuse to open a bottle at 6 p.m. So that's fun. A little bit about myself. So my name is Nema Pejcic. I'm Serbian native, but I've been working in the hospitality industries for the last 12 years since my arrival to the country. I started off as a nurse back home. And then before I got to United States, I got a job for a Cunard company working on the Queen Mary 2, at the time biggest ocean liner. So that was my kind of like introduction to the whole hospitality in general. So after like roughly working around 2 years over there, then I moved to New York. Had a pleasure working for some incredible talented chefs like Wiley Dufresne, Jeffrey Zakarian, and the beverage programs, and the investment in the wine program was quite considerate at those places. So I was kind of blessed to work with some of the people who are to this day like industry leaders, you can say. For the past 8 years, I've been here in San Diego. And for the past roughly 5.5 years, I've been working at Greystone Steakhouse, which initially started off as me filling in the role as a som. And then quickly, maybe within a year of working as a som at Greystone, I became a wine buyer, kind of created my own position there with the owners, Vincenzo and Alessandro. I've kind of proven myself that we can run a successful, fun, interactive wine program. And right now, currently, they have 7 different restaurants, 5 different concepts. So we have 2 steakhouses, we have a seafood place, we have a casual Sicilian eatery, we have a farmer stable restaurants. One of them is located close to Born and Raised. So it's a bunch of different concepts. And at one point, I was running a program for almost all of them, except the farmer stable. But as I wish there is more time in a day, I realized I got to take a little step back and kind of like dial back. So currently, obviously, I'm unemployed. But once things open up, we are going to resume probably with
hopefully sooner than later.
Saltwater is the newest addition to a restaurant group, Greystone Steakhouse, Butcher's Cut. So those 3 I will be overseeing. But yeah, that would be like kind of like in brief something. But I just wanted to touch base when it comes to this. I feel like what everybody's going through right now, it's important to recognize my owners, Vincenzo and Alessandro, and also GM Sarah Arjmand and Joe Siciliano. They decided as owners and also us as a staff to remain open during the first few months of this pandemic and kind of like give to the first responders. So all of the restaurants, although closed for public, we remained open, and we were giving away food for people who were just dealing with all this when everything kind of seemed uncertain and we didn't kind of know what we were battling. So I just want to give a big shout out to all of them for having a good heart and kind of like deciding to do that. But yeah, that's briefly about me. Once again, today we're going to talk about 2 different wines. Cuvelier Los Andes, this is as something that I've been always doing on the side. I have a wine consulting company and I work for Hillside Wine and Spirits. Bruno Laclotte is the owner of it. So today we're featuring Cuvelier Los Andes. 100% Malbec that we're gonna touch
Yeah.
a bit later.
So I
But
love it. So we have obviously 2 wines, right, for this month's wine club. And I think, people last time were asking me what wine should we dig into, and I think it's completely up to you. I have both the wines open here, so we're going to talk about both of them. I'm trying to figure out the best way too. I don't want necessarily people to blow both of their wine club wines in one night. Obviously, wine is better enjoyed with friends, so you probably want to like enjoy one of these with someone. So last time everybody was asking which wine do we open, and I think that it's completely up to you. We'll discuss both of them, but I also think that having you here, it might make sense to open the Cuvelier Los Andes, because then we can, it's a little bit more relevant. We can answer more questions about this wine, take advantage that you're here, and kind of pull all the information out of your head.
this is a celebratory night, so if you ask me, I will open both of them right now.
Hey, I'm not. I have them both open, so you can do what you want. I'm definitely not going to be opposed to that.
Good way to also understand the differences in all of the styles.
Yeah.
Differences of the wine regions, the climate, the winemaking processes, and all of those if you taste them side by side.
Yeah.
So if you have a Corvin or any kind of device that preserves the wine, use it. If not, if you have more than one person drinking with you, just pop the cork.
So I want to figure this out real quick. So I'm curious. You know what? I think we're gonna do. Hold on one second. I'm gonna try to figure this out. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so what I think might be a good idea is what I love to do, and I think part of this too, and having a guest on like yourself, is I think it's super helpful for people to be able to hear somebody else describing a wine, right? Like I know that a lot of people sometimes get caught up in listening to the same person, but as you know, like you learn a lot by hearing other people describe the same thing in a different way, right? So what I'd like to do is I want to take advantage real quick. I'll take the first wine, I'll take the Cahors, and then I want you to take the Cuvelier Los Andes and kind of taste it, break it down, walk us through it, however you would normally do it, like for your staff at work or however you want to pitch it. I kind of just love to get your approach on however it is that you break down wines, right? If that's cool. I'm going to start off with the Cahors. So we have this wine. So this is one of sorry, I'm going to be, before I get ahead of myself. So I think for the foreseeable future, one of the themes that I want to do, because the first month I got excited and I kind of just threw out 2 wines that I was super pumped on with kind of no theme going on. What I want to do moving forward is at least rip through the international grapes, right? Like Malbec, Pinot, Cab, Syrah, maybe not so international like Tempranillo, and do like a new world versus old world comparison. So we can really kind of dig in and kind of learn about the wines, right? And learn about the regions that they come from and that best represent them. I think that's really the focus of this wine club. So I just want to reiterate is practicality, right? It's not like I'm not necessarily forcing wines on you guys to like, oh, this is stuff that I love and you have to do it. It's more about finding what I think is the best interpretation of the wines of the world out there so that we can bring them to you, we can talk about them. And then when you go to a restaurant or a wine bar, you can be like, oh man, like, damn, I had an amazing Cahors last week. Like I'm all about Cahors now. And like, you know what that is and you know what that means. So that's the intention moving forward, just to kind of put that out there. So stop me at any time. I want to, there's a little chat here. Obviously you guys know how to use that. You can throw up a question on there. You can raise your hand if you have a question. Like if anything doesn't make sense, if anything doesn't sound right, if I put up some descriptor where you're like, absolutely not, I do not get that in this wine, like feel free to interject. We always encourage people to call BS on stuff here because we want it to be practical, right? We want you to be able to understand it. So, and then we have an interesting conversation too. Like, so wine is completely subjective. Maybe you get something that I don't, and likewise, right? That being said, I'm going to do a quick version. If you saw this already on the video that I sent, bear with us. I'm not trying to be repetitive, but maybe you didn't, so we can do that here. Is anybody drinking the Cahors, first of all? Does anybody have this one open? Oh God, everybody's ripping through the Cuvelier Los Andes. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, perfect. Either way, I'll just talk about it briefly and then I'll let you run away with this wine, Nema. But just to reiterate, so the Cahors is actually, we were talking about this on the video. So again, 2 Malbecs, right? New World, which is the Mendoza that Nema has, and then the Old World from France. So in a lot of the regions in France and a lot of the regions in Central Europe, actually, they do not list the grape on the bottle, right? They're very much, they pay homage to the region where it comes from, and which is actually pretty cool. They pay a lot of respect to the land. So for the most part, you'll see the region and they expect you to know it, which can get a little tricky. So in this one, it says Cahors. we now know that Cahors is a region in the southwest part of France. It's kind of southeast of Bordeaux. Technically, they're allowed to do minimum 70% of Malbec, and they can blend in Merlot to the wine as well. So they're allowed to blend in some grapes as well. But traditionally, what you're seeing mostly are Malbec-driven wines from Cahors. Now, when we talk about New World and Old World too, a lot of times in Old World wines, you get a lot more secondary notes too. So even in the color of the wine, you will see that it is very bright purple color to it, which is very traditional for Malbec. This is a thick skinned grape, which is going to give you this thicker kind of color and concentration to the wine. It's going to have this darker blueberry and blackberry fruit note to the wine as well, kind of medium plus body. And when I was tasting this wine earlier and when I did the video too, what I really love about it is it's really high aromatic, so very floral. You get a lot of violet, a lot of lavender, which is really cool. A lot of secondary notes, which AKA non-fruit notes, which can include like spice, floral notes, herbal notes, things like this. And I think that there's a lot of kind of like leather and fresh tobacco notes on this wine, which is really cool, making it kind of spicy. There's definitely a dried herb component, which you get in a lot of the wines from the south of France, which is really cool. Makes it a great food wine, which I definitely recommend having this with some food. And I think that it's a region that's also known for not using a lot of new oak, right? If you go to somewhere like Napa is known for using a lot of new oak to kind of match up with and add structure to the body of Cabernet. They go very well together. They go hand in hand. This is not a region that's known for using a lot of new oak. Nema's probably going to talk about the use of oak in a lot of wines from Mendoza, right? But this is not necessarily the case in Cahors, which is kind of cool. That being said, you don't need new oak to get the color and concentration and body from this wine. When you taste it, it definitely coats the palate without being very rich and without having to add anything. Yeah, I'll kind of keep it at that, I think. And then Nema, why don't you take away the wine since everybody's focused on you now, everybody's drinking your wine. I'm going to hand it over to you, man. Tell us about it.
Sure thing. So to tell the story of Cuvelier, it's to actually go back to 1800s when the winery was founded. So Henry Cuvelier has been a family wine merchant, and he opened the winery initially back then for his friends and family. He had a lot of rich friends at the time, so he was like, I might as well just buy the wine from the chateaus and then vinify myself. And there we go. So that was the creation, 1804 to be more precise. And if you kind of fast forward 100 years after that, Paul Cuvelier, now his successor, he has kind of like avant-garde in his approach. So at the time, we're talking about 1900s now, right? He is thinking like, hey, this whole trend of chateaus giving you the grapes, wine merchants buying those grapes and vinifying themselves. You know, how about we acquire a chateau and then we have estate bottled wine instead? So at that time, they actually bought what was later to become a second growth on the 1855 classification called Chateau Louis Poiferret from the Saint-Julien. And then 20 years later, they also acquired Chateau Lacroix, the Cru Bourgeois from Saint-Estèphe, also left bank. So they started acquiring the chateaus, and then if you go to fast forward 1999, they partner up. So you have successor of Henry and Paul, Bertrand Cuvelier now. He partnered up with Michel Rolland, and who is also referred to as a flying winemaker. He's a legend in our industry. And they kind of like embarked on this trip. They went to Argentina, they went to Mendoza. They're like, hey, this is it. We love what we see here. We have beautiful sunshine throughout the year, no clouds, high elevation, low latitude. It's like perfect to create this Malbec variety long exterminated due to phylloxera. And so let's try to do something new here in Argentina. So they embarked on this trip. So Cuvelier now has 50% of the production. They're giving away to Michel Rolland. And as a favor back, Michel Rolland is also a consulting winemaker for the Cuvelier Los Andes. So now you have 100% Malbec. Vineyards are located on the steep slopes, organically farmed, biodynamically farmed. It's a very dry area. It's like semi-dry, arid area over there. So there is not a whole lot of pests and diseases throughout the year. So it's like a viticulturist's dream to be growing grapes and winemakers' dream to be vinifying the wines in those regions. So as a result, we have Malbec here, which is like Rafa said, it's a smaller berry, but thicker skin, higher juice to skin ratio. And as a result, if you want to get, this is one of those wines that when you pour it in a glass, it stains your glass. So you got to wash your glass. So you be careful not to cut yourself, but that's another story.
And the teeth too.
Yeah, but now we're talking about maceration. So if you want to produce a fresh and young, vibrant style, like I would say partially Cuvelier is, and I say partially, I'm going to explain that later, that's due to only 7 to 10 day maceration, right? And after that, the wine is vinified in a stainless steel. And then after that, it's kept in a 60% French oak, but not new, used oak for 11 months. So now when you think about Cuvelier family, Michel Rolland was a Frenchman, right? So now you have this style that it's kind of like modern, but at the same time has a little bit of that connotation from Bordeaux. So you have those layers, you have those little aromas and flavors. They're reminiscent of the home of Malbec, which you can say is Cahors.
Nema, can I jump in there real quick too? One of the reasons that I really enjoyed this wine and where I really like it as well is because of what you just said. And I think that a lot of Malbecs from Argentina, and we'll dig into this a little bit because I think it's a really interesting conversation, but you know, they can be maybe very one-dimensional sometimes. I think that's one of the reasons why it's an easy go-to, right? Like it's an easy way for people. I mean, look at how popular it's become. You have, you know, the most popular 3 red grapes are like 3 red grapes that you have to have on your menu are Pinot Noir, Cabernet, got to have those 2. Or people, I mean, don't have to, but you should. I mean, it's what people want. And then Malbec is always like right after that, right? And it's so funny how it just completely took off. But and I think part of that is because one, it's an easy go-to, right? It's very approachable for a lot of people because it's easy drinking. But what I liked about this one is that it's not one-dimensional. It does have, maybe it's because of that French winemaking, it's probably a lot of regionality, but it's not just all fruit. There was a lot of really kind of pretty floral notes to it. There's a lot of minerality to the wine. It's kind of very lifted and bright. That's what I really enjoyed about this wine.
Kind of that blue and black fruit cluster. You mentioned violets. I totally agree. And then you have a little bit, not smoky, but definitely that kind of like earthier, savory notes to it as well. That it just doesn't dominate the wine, but it's a complement to it. It elevates it. And you got to talk about tannin management. And then that's all thanks to that high elevation, you know, and then also the huge shifts in temperature between the day and night that you see in Mendoza. You got to think about it. You have a high intense sun all day, but if the heat stays throughout the night, you would have a flabby wine. It wouldn't be so good. The structural components like acidity would suffer, and then you would just have something that doesn't stand well. And it's off. But thanks to that shift in the day and night temperature, now all of a sudden at night, the grapes remain fresh. And then the next day, they get that sunshine exposure. And so they have the concentration of phenolics. They become softer, they become riper. And then as a result, they all distempt. So there's no stock, there's no stems that come into the play here. This is all just the berries, carefully selected. And
what do you mean by, can you go, and it might be self-explanatory, but what do you mean when you say destemmed?
So what I mean by that is, like we mentioned, that Malbec is a thick grape variety, right? So if it's a thick grape variety, and if you harvest that kind of style of grape too early in the season, you're gonna end up with a bitter and astringent wine, really biting. Like you would take a sip of that, you'd be like, man, I need a ribeye or a wagyu when it comes to just some heavy marbling, just to wash off that astringency off my mouth. But if you let it ripen long enough into the season and you harvest it at the perfect time, you know, you have that kind of like tannin management, and then you macerate the wine in the winery, and then you let the wine undergo entire malolactic fermentation, which is further softening of the structural components of the wine. And then you let it rest for a little bit, up to a year, and then you end up with a style that it's approachable. And that's why I feel like Malbec became so wildly popular throughout the world. And kind of like for people who are getting into wine industry, it really is, at least on my end, that like I feel like anytime I come across a guest that it's either intimidated or just starting to drink wine and they ask for Malbec first. And for me, that's a good opportunity to either introduce them to an amazing Malbec value or to recommend them another wine based on what they tell me. And I feel like maybe that's a conversation for another time, but it's also very important to know.
No, definitely not. I think that's a great thing to address. Like, so somebody enjoys this style. So first of all, just to go in full circle real quick, how would you describe this style? And then if somebody enjoys this style, but they want to try something different, where would you take them?
So I would definitely describe this style as a gap in between the new and old world. Obviously, you have the ripeness of the new world, but you also have the elegance, finesse, and layers of the old world, and also structural components like acidity of the old world. So it's definitely like that bridge wine that it's like super pleasing. Like you can sip this on its own, or you can have it with a nice like some sort of protein, heavy protein, red protein, and you would be super happy with it. If somebody likes something like this, I would probably take him somewhere either in California or maybe take him to like a Southern Rhone. Or I mean, there is so many places you can take him, but at the same time, maybe even I would maybe even try to play with even Bordeaux, certain chateaus, one that are more modern in their approach, because there's a lot of that coming up too. But definitely, you know, the playground is huge.
Yeah.
And it's a gap wine. It's that kind of bridge wine in between the two styles, but still just delicious and lush. And that's what I'm trying to explain to people when they come in. I'm trying to kind of to assess. People come intimidated to Greystone, I'd say, and I talk to them, and they're like, "Oh, we do not know a whole lot about wine." I'm like, "Oh, like you not necessarily should be saying that, because each of us know what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy. You do not have to know anything about wine whatsoever, but if you understand your own palate and you express that information with your song, and hopefully get a somm who is not either pretentious or, you know, full of himself or a snob, you know. And if you have somebody who really listens to you, and you tell me, listen, I really like this fruit forward wines. I like kind of like little floral notes. I like it to be soft, easy drinking, soft texture, smooth wine. Those informations for somebody like Rafa, myself, and anybody else in the industry are enough to recommend you like hundreds of bottles of wine based on what you just said. So even without having any kind of like wine education, you still understand yourself and what you like. And that's a perfect starting point for me. I mean, what do you think, Ralph?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think, you know, I just want to reiterate as well that I think that there's a lot of Malbecs. I think a lot of grapes, like depending on the winemaker and style, they'll differ in the structure and the way that they're made, right? Because I think that there's a lot of Malbecs too, a lot of Malbecs from Mendoza, Argentina, that are very big, very rich. They'll get up to 14.5% alcohol, so they'll be bigger in body than this. The fruit components will be a lot bigger and riper. You kind of get this denser, almost chewy tannin sometimes from Malbec too. It can be kind of chocolatey and very dark. So I think it depends on the style that somebody's looking for. And I think that, you know, the goal here is to hopefully set people up to be able to describe these wines within that context, right? I think it's kind of hard too when people are like, "Oh, I love Malbec. Can I just have a Malbec tonight?" You're like, well, you know, I think you have to dig a little bit deeper. And I always do, right? And I'm sure you do, like to find out what they're referring to. And they might not be exactly sure how to describe it, but I think that, you know, this would certainly be a leaner, kind of more old school, old world style of Malbec. And I think the way that you get to that is, I think this comes across as being a little bit more medium bodied. The fruit's a little bit more restrained, and you have more of these non-fruit components that are coming through in the wine, right? And it's not just a big bomb of a Malbec. I think that's worth noting for sure. It's funny because you mentioned like Bordeaux too, right? When you guys get to tasting this wine, the Cahors, this reminds me a ton of Bordeaux because it has that kind of barnyardy component that you get in some older Bordeaux, which is really cool. You know, and I think it's kind of interesting to know too that, you know, Malbec is one of the 5 Bordeaux allowable grapes in that region, right? And you have Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and then Malbec's always like mentioned at the very end, right? The 5th grape that nobody talks about. I think part of that is too, it's been planted less and less in the region. Nema had mentioned, you know, phylloxera. It was a devastating kind of vine disease that ripped through France in the later part of the 19th century. When that happened, a lot of the Malbec suffered here, and then there's a lot of other things that were involved in that. People started to plant it less and less, and then finally a big frost that ripped through Bordeaux, I think 1950s or 1960s, that devastated almost all the Malbec, and people took advantage and they're like, you know what, let's just not replant as much Malbec and let's focus more on Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon. Obviously, Bordeaux, it's not a very warm climate, right? It's a cooler continental climate. Malbec needs a lot of sunlight. You get up into higher elevation in Mendoza, Argentina, which was Nema was talking about, it's some of the highest vineyards in the world, which is pretty wild. If you go up to the northern part of Mendoza and Salta, you're looking at vineyards that are 8,000, 9,000, 9,500 feet in elevation, which is crazy. I mean, you're talking fresh powder at that altitude, which you don't see at like sea level over here in Bordeaux. So, which is really interesting. Also, the higher up you get, right, the more exposure the grapes get to UV light from the sun. So much more intense sunlight that's hitting these grapes, it's allowing them to ripen fully, which is another thing I want to add on to this wine, right? It's from Valle de Uco, which says on the label, this is the highest region in the western part of Mendoza, right? Which is another kind of cool thing about it, that you're getting a little bit more higher altitude already in these vineyards that are already in the foothills of the Andes Mountains, which I think is pretty cool.
No, absolutely. This is just a nice little style differences, and it's amazing to taste them side by side like this. And you know, these kind of informations, I feel like they're like appreciated amongst people, because then you have a deeper understanding of the given region, which is awesome what you're doing on your platform too. I gotta give you a shout out for that too. I mean, that's hospitality TV, and you know, with all the amazing things that you're doing. I mean, definitely conversations that, you know, you keep them in a certain way that are just anybody can join in and discuss any given topic, and it's just awesome stuff, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that plug. That's very nice of you. Speaking of, I definitely took opportunity of the last, when I was filming the video for this wine club, breaking down the wines, I took the opportunity to kind of do a quick little segment on Malbec. So I'm going to be adding that to the channels on these newsletters that I'm sending out. I'll add those recap videos. So that, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, so it's kind of good to have this platform to do it now, but just have one place where you can go if you need to revisit the major growing regions of Malbec, for example, and what they taste like. There'll be a video for that. And I'm going to do videos like for all these major grapes, which will be kind of cool too. I'm super excited for that. Does anybody have any questions so far on either one of these wines that you guys are there? It's just small and intimate tonight.
It's nice and cozy.
It's nice and cozy. Nema, what are you most excited about right now? What have you been drinking lately? Anything that's
I'm also excited going back to work, to be honest with you. I'm just kidding. You know what? My cellar really took some hit over the course of 9 months, should I say? But I've been drinking more of those Viña Verdes lately, and the German whites, man. I kind of like on that little streak, just something fun and refreshing, I feel like.
Yeah.
And since we work in a steakhouse, you and I both know we're cab lovers. I mean, we have cabs every single night, I feel like. So I had a bunch of those left over in the cellar. So I think when I set up a like barbecue grill for a family, I think that's what I.
That's your go-to. Yeah, I love it. So, a couple of people not drinking. Oh, you know what? That's the other thing too. I didn't even realize. A handful of people told me they're doing dry January, so that totally makes sense.
Hard to do.
Not over there. I see you, Laura. Cheers.
Too much stress to be sober January right now.
We lasted like 4 days.
Hey, me too. That's I lasted one more day than you. I did 5 days. And...
Love it.
Hey, Laura, I haven't talked to you forever. How you guys been? How you doing over there with the distillery?
We're staying afloat. Thank you. Super sweet for asking. I know we missed you. I miss you.
No, I miss you guys too.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're the tasting room is one thing. Obviously, you know, it's rough, but thank goodness for distribution, I suppose. Not something I ever thought that I would say. Distribution is
the worst.
The toughest part of the business, but you know, thank goodness for canned cocktails.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, I'm just curious now, just because we're such a small group, and maybe we can just chat a little bit. But what do you think have been some of the major ways that you guys have pivoted during everything that's happened this year to keep your business going?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, Luke
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but just Laura, just for other guys on the call here, Laura is the owner, operator, and main distiller for You and Yours Distillery downtown.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, Luke and I, who's my partner, my business partner, and my husband, we've always just fought for that day where third party, like wholesale sales, distribution sales would, keep our business afloat. And then our tasting room could be, just a bonus. And up until the pandemic, it was the opposite. So the tasting room actually kept us afloat because, hospitality and creating experiences and cocktails and service is like such a big part of what we do. And this whole situation has flipped it on its head. So we no longer have our tasting room to keep us afloat and to keep us in business. So we're really
And restaurants aren't open to buy the liquor bottles. So.
And we not only have we lost our tasting room business, but we've lost half of our distribution business, which is on premise. So it's been rough, but thankfully from some random act of the universe, canned cocktails have just skyrocketed. So thanks to the fact that we offer, 8 different SKUs of those, we've kept afloat. And 2020 in a weird way was one of our best years yet. Financially,
there's obviously losses
the
of this, that, and the other, but it actually grew year over year, which is kind of crazy. But some of the things we've been doing just to kind of, it's funny because that's what caught my attention when you posted this. Obviously I want to support, you always take care of us and vice versa. Like,
Thank you.
But what I was going to say was we've been doing similar stuff. So we have virtual cocktail classes. We're selling hundreds of those pre-Christmas and even into January. We can now ship liquor, which has never been, we can never sell direct to consumer. So we could never ship, we could never do anything like that. So that's been amazing, being able to, sell online. People are over here to support. They understand that, that times are hard and they want to support where they can. And, hopefully we're doing the same thing. But those are the kind of, online has been a big driver. And honestly, I see online going even further, like hopefully it lasts, but I see that we could do a lot more online. That's my background. So I would, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so when you say ship liquor, you mean like direct from you to the customer versus going through a distributor?
Yeah.
To ship
Exactly.
So prior to March, April of last year, because we make something that is like high enough in alcohol that is considered a distilled spirit, like thanks to prohibition and the federal government, like we're not allowed to ship or sell that direct. We have a bunch of regulation on top of us. So as a distiller, I kind of have my hands tied behind my back when it comes to a winemaker or a brewer. But that's kind of one of these random silver linings that has come out of COVID, is that I can now ship my product direct to a consumer. So that's been really helpful.
Amazing. And do you ship directly to like a retail too, like a supermarket or things like this? Or do you have to go through distribution for that?
Yeah. So we still have to go through a distributor if we want to go to like a bar, restaurant, liquor store, grocery, anything like that.
Right. Super interesting. And I think, so now that you've seen that that's taken off, thankfully, without having to really pivot or, like be preemptively ready for that, do you think you're going to focus more marketing, things like that, towards like the online consumption?
It's really interesting. It's an interesting like question and thought process, and one that we're going through every day, is because we built our business model and we built this business on the assumption that every lawyer, every industry consultant, everyone within liquor production said that this would never happen. So we never even thought that this would be like a possibility for us. So now that we can ship direct and that we can have something like a wine club, right, is really exciting and completely foreign. Not foreign to us because we love joining them and supporting, but the fact that we're able to now brainstorm and perhaps offer one of our own is now not only now a possibility, but now something that we should probably / have to do.
Right.
And we don't want to half-ass it, right? Like we want to make sure that everything that we offer is, at that Y&Y level.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Yeah, sorry, thanks for geeking out with me a little bit. I'm totally, you can obviously tell, like, we can have a conversation here for an hour.
Totally.
Like, picking
Yeah.
your
No,
brain here.
thank you for having us. We miss you. We love you. I mean, all of a big chunk of my
Yeah.
favorite like wine experiences have been thanks to you. So cheers to you, Rafa.
Yeah, what's funny is she came home and I was on the couch, I had the wine set up and I was watching the YouTube video and I don't read anything or pay attention, and she grabs this and she's like, the
We're
happy hour is
3
on right
minutes
now.
late.
And I was like, I thought he said it was tomorrow night. And she's like, it's right now. So we jumped on, and I was actually going to text you. I was like, really well done. The content on that video, even like, it was really interesting. I watched the whole thing. It's 12 minutes. And I was like, I was really interested and engaged. It was easy to follow. So I was going to text you, like, great job. And then we tuned in. So here we are.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you. I promise one of these days, one of these months, one of these years, I'm actually going to make a short video. I was rolled into every video like, okay, people want quick, to the point, direct. Got to be 2 minutes. I'm going to do 2 minutes per wine. And I can't shut up. I think
Don't shut up.
Yeah.
Don't shut up. Got nothing but time these days.
Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, I think, and that's a great thing. Maybe I'll put out like a poll on a newsletter or something, but I just think everybody, I mean, you, Luke, you probably know this, right? Like, I don't know what the specs are, but what like the average like length that somebody actually looks at a video online, right? It's got to be short, I think. I don't know.
3 to 10 seconds.
What's that?
The highest leverage point is the first 3 to 10 seconds. 3 seconds is critical.
But that's to like get somebody hooked.
To grab them in. But
hooked.
once they're in, no longer than 2 minutes. But I've got the shortest attention span of anybody in the world, and I watched the entire 12 minutes. Obviously, I mean, I'm serious. If it's good, engaging, and the way you went through it, like, it's good. It doesn't really matter. I think if the content's good, that's really what it comes to. If the content's good, the value's there, people are going to watch it. So
that's true. I think one thing is like scrolling kind of mindlessly, like, getting lost on this thing. And I think another thing is, if you're going to look for something that interests you already, you're going to watch it, right? Like I have certain guys that I follow that I'll go watch a 15-minute video, or even just have it listening in the background while I'm doing something else, right? Because it's something that interests me. So yeah, but I appreciate the feedback. I always take feedback if it needs to be adjusted or anything. But yeah, I added the kind of the who, what, where, when, why, and how component to that video, just to kind of be like, I think just start at the basics, right? It's like kind of like a scientific approach of like, what is the essential things we need to know here? Let's not get lost in things that don't matter. And I think, producer, grape, where it's from, when it was made, kind of in that when it was made, the time capsule of, are there any significant aging requirements here that actually matter to this wine? And then why are they making this wine? We kind of discussed that a little bit more in depth with Nema, which I'm stoked. Like, why are they making this here? Because by law in France, if you're going to call your wine Cahors, you have to put Malbec in it. That's why they're making it. Why are they making it here? Well, it's because it took off in Mendoza. It's we talked about the higher elevation and why, the lack of humidity and fungal diseases, and why people don't have to spray, pesticides and things like that because of this. And I think it's kind of an interesting way to get to the things that matter, which has kind of been a big focus too. I think you can get lost a lot of times. Nema and I know this a lot, and I've talked about this a lot to him, and I have like a real love-hate relationships with a lot of these educational certifying bodies for the sommelier community, because they force you to, I should be careful here. They force you to study a lot of information that, in my experience, 70% of it I'd never use at a table with a customer. And it's more of like, how much information can you actually retain? I don't think anybody cares about what the legal minimum alcohol percentage allowable is in Valle de Uco, Mendoza. What they do care about is, what the hell does this wine taste like?
Yeah, agree.
And if I like this wine and I want to venture off into something else, like, what might be something comparable to it, right? Like more practical information. So that's what our focus is.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rafa.
No, please.
To add to that as well, if you really want to understand what's going on inside of the bottle, it's like, like certain questions when it comes to like growing the grapes and making the wine that actually are a determining factor, and really help you understand that region and what's going on. Just like you touched based on a Cahors, right? So you had a phylloxera, which is like a little bug that eats up the vines. It destroyed the vineyards in Bordeaux, in France in general. And then 1956, the deep frost. So literally they picked up the Malbec cuttings and they moved it to Malbec. that's truly what has happened, and it's like once you know the background story, it makes sense. Now you have all these settlers, mainly European, mainly French, Spaniards, and Italian, who came to Argentina and started doing all this fun stuff. So it's like once you connect the dots, it really becomes, and you understand the importance of climate, the weather, the soil. Honestly, it's not a rocket science. It's just like committing enough time to start connecting the dots. And once you do, it's like a chase. I feel like it's a life chase. At least for me, I don't know, Ruff.
No, I agree. It's good chatting with you too, Nema. We never really get to geek out on wine a little bit. I feel like we always talk about other stuff.
That's true. We always stick to drinking. Yeah.
So if I were a customer coming into Greystone, I'm like, hey, Nema, how's it going? I want to get some wine tonight. Let's do a little role play here. I want to see how you break down a customer who's coming in.
Sure, let's do it.
Cool. So I want to get a wine. I don't want to spend over $100. I love Malbecs. I love Pinots. I had a great cab last week. What do you recommend?
I mean, first thing I would ask you, why are you saving money on this lovely lady you're sitting with?
Wait, I can't get a great wine for under $100.
I've done that.
I've been in here for 1 minute. You're already trying to gouge me here?
To be honest with you, the first thing I would do is I would try to see what are you trying to get into. And my instinct would be like, I want to create a regular customer out of you. So when you say $100, what I'll do is I'll find something for 60, 70, 80 that it's tremendous value after asking you a series of questions of just to try to understand what you like, what you enjoy flavor-wise. Once again, going back, you don't have to have a whole lot of wine knowledge, but tell me what you enjoy, the flavor profile. Then I would bring you a few bottles and I would talk to you about that. And I would be like, based on what you told me, I really think this is what you should try. And then you reveal the price at the end, because when you say $100, it's usually like, hey, it's gonna be like 120, 150. But when you treat somebody like I just mentioned, and at the end you mention, hey, this bottle of wine is $70. And he was like, really? It's like, that's when you capture that moment and you retain that guest and you create a repeat business out of it.
Last time you did that for me, it cost me $975 for the bottle.
Like that, when you want to indulge yourself. And, I think Greystone is one of 6 restaurants in San Diego, for the depth of wine list. So there's something for everybody. So,
Nema, I got to be honest. This wine is really showing well. And, to be honest with everybody here, I Corvined both of these wines for the video that I put out, which was Wednesday. I think I did it on Thursday, so almost a week ago. And to be 100% honest, because this has been open, not technically open, but just Corvin, if you guys know what the Corvin is, right? The little needle that goes through the cork and it extracts wine, replaces that volume with an argon gas to maintain the wine. This wine is not held up as well. So I think that, maybe that's a good point. This wine, drink it within the first night or two, right? Don't drink half of it and put it in the fridge for 4 or 5 days. But when it's fresh and brand new, this wine is absolutely delicious. This wine still tastes amazing. It hasn't lost any of its flavor at all. So just a fun note, not that we encourage putting the wine on the counter for 4 or 5 nights, but I mean, this feels like this could go 2-3 nights, no problem, and still taste delicious. I feel like it hasn't dropped off a little bit. Just a quick side note. It's tasting fantastic right now.
Finishing the bottle has never been a problem in this household. It seems to go like that.
Yeah, I don't even. I mean, I'm speaking from a theoretical standpoint. So I've never had a bottle for 4 or 5 days like that. Yeah. So, anything else you want to talk about, Nema? Anything else on your mind? Want to keep anybody here for too long?
Yeah, right now, but I mean, let's try to be more engaging as far as like if there's any questions, because me and you can go on and on. I feel like, but
yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Anybody have any questions? What do you guys think about the wine? Did you
Or I
like
was going to ask, and I don't know if you covered this, maybe she jumped on later, but do you guys want to give us, and I don't know if you already did the food pairings, but she was going to ask, like, give us some specific food pairings for this. I kind of watched the video, so I have an idea, but
ooh, yeah.
some ideas. Obviously, it's a Malbec, something, but just want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yeah. What do you think, Nema? I'll let you start off.
Well, I would have also buco with your Cahors Malbec, definitely. Definitely like a lamb leg braised for a long time, or any kind of beef braised with like carrots, like demi-glaze, like garlic cloves, and just that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
That said, I feel like that can also stand out to a nice little marbled ribeye, for sure.
Someone likes those.
Yeah, for the Malbec from Argentina, lovely filet mignon, something nice with a little bit leaner cut of steak. I think it would go quite well to kind of like emphasize that fruity aspect, so it just to kind of pop a little. But definitely, like I said, red protein of some sort. I don't know, Rafa, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think leaner proteins, right? You said with the fillet, I think pork. I think that was one of the ones that I put on the video. All types of pork would go really well with this because it's not necessarily a big, rich like ribeye or T-bone or New York or something even like this, where the protein is so rich. You definitely, ideally, you would want to have some tannin to accompany that to match the weight. I think it's always important that the wine matches the weight of the dish, right? I think an easy way to do that, you can look at it a couple different ways, right? You can think of wines as being light, medium, or full embodied. Another way to look at that is you can kind of cheat and guide by the alcohol level that's on there. So I think if you're looking at a wine like this, that's 13.5% alcohol, which is the case for both of these wines, that's pretty much a medium bodied wine. When you go like 14 and a half and above, you're looking at a full bodied wine. And if you're going like 13 or 13 and a half and below, you're thinking light bodied, right? So for something full bodied, you should match it with a very rich dish. Like, for example, a fatty steak like we're talking about, or some type of smoked meat, right, that has an intense flavor. If you're going for something medium bodied like this, you can match it with a leaner cut of meat, right? You can go with pork, all different types of pork, roasted pork. You can go with duck. You can go with some, especially with something with the Cahors that has these bready Bordeaux notes to it, AKA I'm talking like kind of barnyardy, kind of funky notes. Go with something that has, go with game bird, go with duck, go with something that has, or go with something just a little bit gamier, like boar or something like this, that has a little bit more of a meaty, gamey component. And if you're thinking of something that's light bodied, like say, for example, 13.5 and under, like a lighter style of Pinot Noir that doesn't have any oak on it, well, then you're thinking very light dishes, and that's why you can even use Pinot Noir for seafood, right? You're thinking like the lightest protein of all, you can go lighter styles of fish, different types of fish preparations and things like this. Pinot Noir will go well with that. So I think that's one way to look at it too. Try to match body and body, wine with the dish. Another thing is try to match, either fruit or non-fruit components. And like we said, I think this has a lot of the kind of still some of these gamey, drier sage notes. Try to match that in with, the dish that you're having.
I think I just got an idea, Rob.
Talk to me, chef.
Come over to my house. We should do a cookout, like a ribeye, New York strip, filet mignon, right? And then have a few different wines and then break it down which one pairs with which and why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Versus what kind of wine you're drinking, I think it's very important. I mean, definitely.
Yeah, so I've actually, from being obviously in our position, we have a lot of chef buddies, and I have quite a few chef friends that I hang out with, and several of them have mentioned that they want to just come on here and do like a cooking thing. I think that'd be a super fun thing for us to do. I think one of these wine clubs will bring on a chef and do something that's like interactive, that's doable, that without having a full-on chef kitchen at home. But yeah, what do you think? Would you guys be into something like that?
Yes, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
I was even reaching out to people from Specialty Produce, and they could like help with like sourcing some of the food so we can all get it. Maybe even hand it out with the wine club, honestly, like some of the major ingredients.
Yeah.
Super easy.
That'd be amazing.
I think that'd be super fun. Yeah, I have a couple friends who would be, they'd be a blast to have in front of the camera, and not to mention they're just great chefs also. So
Nice.
yeah, we should definitely do that. That's a great idea. But we'll come and do the steak demo at your house first, Nema, because
I can't.
I want to pick your brain on steak pairings.
For any other kind of dishes, man, you're gonna have to refer to my wife or, like you said, one of our chef buddies.
It's so funny because a lot of times, people at a steakhouse, they'll come in like, what's the best pairing with this steak, right? And I think that I don't know. I'd be interested to see what your take on is this. I remember Wine Spectator put something out like last December, and they had these exact pairings of like what you should have with filet and what you should have with ribeye and what you should have with New York and what you should have with a porterhouse. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know how I feel about that. I think that's almost a little too specific.
Yeah.
That, you know, you can play around with and it was very much a solidified document, right? Like, I think you can play around with that a little bit. I always tell people at the restaurant, like, first and foremost, if you love drinking Pinot Noir with a steak, you should absolutely drink your Pinot Noir with a steak. I used to do that all the time. When I worked at Aqua in San Francisco, it was kind of like my intro to fine dining. It was a 2-star Michelin restaurant, but it was all seafood. So we had a bunch of Pinot, and I got really into Burgundy. And I'd go home, and I was like, I don't want to even smell seafood anymore. I'm going to make a steak, but I would drink it with Pinot because I was so into Pinot, and I loved it. I loved it.
I agree with you, and I feel like, you know, one of those like pioneers of this wine industry. I'm talking about Somms right now. I think like they have done a part of a disservice to aspiring Somms and people who are trying to learn, because everything you read, you're trying to see, okay, so this is how it is, and then you got to start thinking with your own head at some point and be like, hey, you know what, this is not really true, because the pairings are subjective, and you might like to drink whatever the heck with Pinot Noir, and you're right. I mean, bottom line is that you do enjoy it. And if you do, who am I to change your perspective of how you should drink and what you should eat with your wine? I mean, that's just how I think. That's why, once again, I go back to that, like, you know, what are you trying to get into? And then if you want to see what I would do, then I make recommendations as far as something different than what you're accustomed to, if it makes sense.
Yes.
But
Now,
you feel-
on the flip side, there's absolutely moments where you need to get involved. Like, I need to be honest, I have never seen so many people have Cabernet and caviar at Born and Raised. And on paper, that is the worst pairing possible, because Cabernet is extremely rich in tannin and full-bodied, and the fish oils alone off of caviar with tannins are just like, it's like water and oil, right?
Mhm.
They do not mesh. But again, if people want to have Cabernet right away and they want to have caviar and they're having a good time, like, honestly,
Stop them.
I haven't gotten that far. I'll definitely make a suggestion. I'll literally bring out free champagne to people. I'll be like, cool, I'm gonna bring that. That's fine. But I would love to bring you a little bit of champagne to try with this, and just tell me what you think.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not, and just. And a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, that was really good. But, you know, they'll do what they want to do. But I think, you know, that's kind of just a funny anecdote. But I think also, you know, one, you can either go the route of, hey, listen, you should drink what you want to drink. But two, I think when a pairing is really done right is where the magic happens, right? Like, I think that's why, like, that's one of the reasons why we're employed at least, is like the ability to actually pair a wine with a dish and have it. I mean, it's like the PB&J concept, right? Like, the things go well together for a reason, and they compare and contrast for a reason. It's the most delicious, simple thing that you can get in your kitchen, and it's magical. Try having one or the other by itself, and it doesn't really work, right? You put them both together, and it's amazing.
Mhm.
And you have that PB&J, right? That salty and sweet that can happen in a lot of things that we know, right? It's like Riesling and popcorn, Riesling and fried chicken. You know, you either compare like the steak and wine, which is easy all day, full-bodied, spicy, big tannin, fatty wines, cool, or contrast and do opposites like the PB&J effect. And I think if you can steer people in that direction, then yeah, there's a noticeable difference.
With a fillet, that would be awesome too. I mean,
What's that? I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
I'm saying, like, you know, you do contrast, you do champagne, like a well-aged
Or there you go. Yeah.
like Krug or Bollinger, and you do stuff like that, and all of a sudden you get a different feeling to it. You know, it's like feeding steaks 2, 3, 4 times a week, and you have always same wine. Like, mix it up so you can have that same satisfaction.
Yes, Julie and Scott, who are on here, won't let me steer them away from champagne, even if I tried. They are big believers in champagne with every course in the meal, and it works. It works.
And it works, yeah.
Just saying never. Yeah. It really does. I completely agree. And it's one of the things too that we've tried to turn more people onto as well. It's like, you know what? If you're looking for one wine to carry you through the whole dinner, champagne's the way to go.
100%. I feel like it's also like a culture. Many people don't drink champagne, or many people confuse the sweet styles of sparkling wine with champagne. And I feel like it's definitely something that it's a little bit an acquired taste, but you should just dive in and let yourself experience the differences of champagne. And once you find what you like, it's just like wow, it's like, you know, you can have that instead of a glass of milk in the morning. You know, just a little blanc de blanc.
All right, let's see what you've been doing in your quarantine. Okay.
And I'm telling you.
Well, guys, we're coming up on 7 o'clock. I want to keep this tight for everybody. I know it's been a long day. It's been a great day. Does anybody have any other questions for Nema or for myself? I just want to take a moment to, again, thank you for taking the time to be on here. Thank you, Nema, so much for taking the time to join us and answer all these questions. I appreciate you. If something comes up and you forgot, I think all of you have my number. Shoot me a text, DM me on Instagram. I want this to be as much as I can handle it. Complete accessibility to any questions that you guys have. Nothing would make me happier to get a FaceTime from one of you guys as you're walking through the aisles of the supermarket trying to decide on a bottle of wine for that night. I'm here for you guys as much as I can. Obviously not while I'm not working too. So once I'm back in the restaurant running around, I don't know if I can take that FaceTime, but yeah, we're here for you guys. Is anything you need, please let us know.
Thank you for doing that, and it's good to see both of you. It's been a long time, it seems. It's been long for you, a couple hours, but thanks for delivering the wine.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's really good. I mean, that's one of the perks of this too. It's good to see you guys too. These are faces that we recognize and that we really care for. So it's good seeing you guys also, man. I can't wait to get back in there and do what we do.
Well, get opened up because I'm hungry.
I know. I'll have to start doing some secret dinners in there or something. We'll figure this out.
Masks on us like cowboy bear. Like
I know. Cowboy bear. All right, guys. Well, hey, listen, we'll wrap it up. Nema, again, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for being on here. This wine is delicious. I can't thank you enough. And thank you, everybody, for being on here. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Healthy.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks, guys. Good to
Thank
meet
you, guys.
everyone.